One of my favorite cartoon characters, Linus from Peanuts, used to say, "You never talk about religion, politics, or the Great Pumpkin." Well, there's one more we're going to add to the list: sharpening.
Stay tuned.
The Woodturning Workshop is made possible in part by
Woodcraft since 1928, providing traditional and modern woodworking tools and supplies to generations of craftsmen. Woodcraft, helping you make wood work.
Tormek, water-cooled sharpeners with innovative jigs and setting devices. Getting your sharpening done quickly gets you back to the job at hand. Tormek, sharpening innovation.
Welcome to our first service at the Church of Sharpening, and today we're going to be talking about all the ins and outs of sharpening. And one thing for sure is you have to have something in which to sharpen your tools on. Now you can go high end. They have sanding systems, they have slow speed wet grinders, or if you want to go the Fred Flintstone route, we have our buddy here today, Alan Laser. Thanks for being on the show, Alan.
Glad to be here.
Now Alan is a master wood turner, and he has been sharpening since they used rocks, right?
That's right. We use 2 rocks on our bronze tools. So, but you absolutely have to have sharp tools to do this wood turning.
And people really don't understand what sharp is, really, do they?
Not at all. And a lot of people quit turning because they never had sharp tools. And unlike a lot of other tools we have in woodworking, they don't come ready to use. And you're going to have to learn to do this yourself. You can't send your tools off to a sharpening service. They're going to bring them back sharpened like a saw. And all these different turning tools are sharpened just a bit differently. But if you don't have sharp tools, it's no fun. You end up doing a lot of sanding, you lose detail in your work. And when everything is perfect, when this tool is sharp at the right angle, turning is effortless. And that's really the goal. So I'm going to show you how to shape and sharpen and get them really, really sharp, even what we call scary sharp, whatever that means, or nasty sharp. But that's essential to be a wood turner. It really is. And then wood turning's fun. Nobody likes to sand.
Yeah, and you have one of the beginning systems most everybody starts with is with a standard grinder, right? And
Absolutely.
Where do you start with this?
Well, I can walk into almost any shop in the world, and I've been all over the place with this wood turning, and I'm going to see a dry wheel grinder. This is still the most fundamental way to sharpen tools. It's accessible to almost everybody, and it has some advantages that I like. But this is just, well, again, it's kind of Fred Flintstone grinding. We have to have the electric motor, but it's real basic and fundamental, but so is wood turning. Wood turning is very similar to this, actually.
Right.
A turning tool on a tool rest, a round object coming down to mean it, rub the bevel and manipulate it. It's very, very similar to wood turning when you use this system. So my belief is you hone your skills as a sharpener and a turner, whether you're doing turning or sharpening. So I'll go through with you here kind of the essentials of a good grinding system, and then the hand honing tools that we use to refine the edge and also to maintain an edge so that you don't run back to the grinder every few minutes as the tool dulls.
So Alan, obviously you've modified this grinder, right?
Yes, I have. You can start with a standard grinder, but I've added a more rigid tool support system here. It's also safer in a lot of ways. I don't need wrenches. One of the biggest things, though, I've changed are the wheels. That's really the heart of any grinding system. Now, here is probably what your grinder came with, were these great wheels. And in the past, they worked sort of okay, but with our high-speed steels, high-wear steels, these great wheels just hardly grind them at all, or you're dressing them constantly. What I would recommend, and sometimes they come with these kind of wheels, a white wheel, which is a friable aluminum oxide. They are in other colors too, but the most common is white. Or what I have on this grinder, these are called seated gel wheels, or SG wheels, and they do very, very good on these modern steels. And I have a sharpening wheel and I have a coarse wheel.
Because you don't want a wheel that is as hardest wheel you can find that lasts as long as possible. Friable means that it breaks away and cleans off the metal shavings.
Absolutely, and these SG wheels are doing it on a micro level, always revealing sharp surfaces, and that's what you need for these high wear steels that we have today. You still need to dress these, and I'll show a dresser, but it's absolutely essential you have at least one good wheel. I sharpen on a 60 or 80 grit wheel, and I use a 46 for my roughing.
Okay.
But if you can only buy one wheel, buy a 60 or 80 as your sharpening wheel. And buy a good wheel, don't skimp on that. Matter of fact, the wheel may be as much as a grinder, some of the cheap grinders that are out there. But you can take a cheap grinder and put good tool rest on it and a good wheel and you got something.
Okay.
Now, whenever you look at this wheel, this is a new wheel, I've used it some, it's already loading up with metal. Regardless of the wheel that you put on it, you have to have a dressing system. This is probably the preferred way of dressing, especially with these better wheels, is a diamond dresser with a lot of different diamonds in there. And that will last most amateurs years and years and years. But here's how I dress. It's very simple. It does a number of things. It cleans the wheels off, it will sharpen the particles, true up the wheel to run round. Because when we do certain tools, I tend to make this concave and I need to straighten it off. So this is critical, a little bit all the time. And it looks like this. It's no more difficult than this process.
So it's almost like you're doing a roughing cut. You're just moving your hand
Absolutely. It's just back and forth like that to true up the wheel. And there's many dressers on the market, but I still think this is one of the simplest of all. You use is just a T-shape, not a single diamond point you freehand, but a T-shape like this. Again, keep it right by the grinder and do a little bit all the time.
Okay. So where do you want to start with now? What tools?
You divide the turning tools up into two groups, the scraping type tools and the keen edge tools. The scrapers are by far the easiest to sharpen, so that's the place I recommend people begin sharpening, is with a scraper.
Now, Alan, why do you have this?
Yeah, that's a cabinet maker scraper. We don't use that in wood turning, but it makes the analogy with our scrapers as a wood turner that they cut with a burr, not a keen edge. That's the same thing with that cabinet maker scraper. So these are quite different. Now they're thicker to begin with, but there's some other differences here though between these two tools even that I'm holding. What do you see, Tim, that's going on?
I can see one. You have two different bevels, and then you're highly polished on this one and it's duller on that.
Absolutely. This is the new tool, the way they come. This is one I've used quite a while. I've polished the top so I'll get a more even and consistent burr. And I've also pushed back this bevel considerably more so that it has less of a chance to catch in the wood.
Okay, well how do you sharpen this then?
Well, let me show you. First thing you're going to do is set the angle of your platform here and lock it down to match this. Put on your eye protection, turn on the grinder, hold it flat on the tool rest here, and when you see the sparks coming over like that, can you see them, Tim? That's how you know you're producing a burr. You just follow the shape. The beauty of a scraper is it can be any shape. And when I follow this, not quite there in some areas.
Are you pressing hard?
I'm pressing down hard to keep it flat on the tool rest. Now I want you to feel that. Run your finger off the edge, and what do you feel?
That is a big burr on there.
Absolutely, and if I was using this for heavy stock removal, this is the burr that I would use. But like a cabinet maker, we know you can produce different burrs. So what I do is take a hone, and I take that off completely. I'm both polishing the top and I'm removing it. And again, I steal this from the cabinet makers. And this is in the old turning books. You take a burnisher, which is a hard piece of steel, can it back towards the top about 5 degrees, and how hard you push down now will develop the burr. And that can be either very light or very medium or heavy, whatever you like.
That's very subtle.
Absolutely. Now that's more of a finishing burr. Now I can take this off and pull up another burr 4 or 5 times, and I have to return to the grinder.
Okay, so you don't have to go to the grinder every time with that tool.
You do not, especially if you're using this to pull up the burr.
Cool. Well, what's our next tool?
Our next tool is really the introduction to the cutting tools. They're keen edge tools. Now these are like a knife. They're going to cut with a sharp edge. I want a single facet and a slight hollow grind, especially so I can hone it. So just like the other tool, and this helps me, even to this day, I'll color it in
I'm used
the
to
bevel
that.
so that I can see. Now if I start grinding like that, obviously it's going to be way off. So adjust this with the grinder off. You do not want to do this with the grinder on. It's too dangerous. That's awfully close. So let's turn on the grinder and see where I'm hitting. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with that. And this tool, you want to grind it from both sides until the spark trail is even. See, I need to remove a little more material here.
And you also want to make sure that the tip is parallel to the body.
Absolutely.
Because you can wind up with a parting tool that's a little bit askew.
Yeah, you don't want to do that yet. We'll do that with the next tool. So I'm getting that. See, the sparks are starting to come over. That tells me I've got a sharp tool. If it's even, there we go.
Okay. Now, is that scary sharp?
No. That's just sharp.
Okay.
To get it scary sharp, we're going to have to hone. And again, with a diamond hone, you can use a flat hone. I've got a slipstone. And all I'm going to do is start at the back. It's got a hollow grind. I start at the back, bring it down. It only touches at 2 places.
So you start on the bottom part, you're touching on the bottom part,
right,
and then you lean into that so you're not rolling it over.
You've got it. If you roll it over, it's a duller tool. Since it's hollow grind, it touches at the back and right below the edge. Okay. And I do it to both sides. And there we go. Now, I will also use honing to maintain that. I haven't ground my tool in probably days of turning. Really? I'll use this to maintain the edge, and also it makes a sharper tool. And that is scary sharp.
That's cool. What's next, the skew?
Well, let's do a skew chisel.
Okay.
After the parting tool, this is the easiest of the flat type tools to sharpen. It's got a angle here about 20 degrees off of 90. This is a traditional grind. I like something slightly different, but this is what most of you are going to have and be using, at least to get started. Color it in the same way. Now, I doubt if that's going to be the same angle. It's not. The safest way to do it is turn off the grinder and let it come to a stop, or close to a stop, and adjust the angle like this as it's slowing down. I'm not touching it yet. There we go. Now let's see where it's going to hit from the side. Ooh, looks pretty good. Let's turn it on and see. Now all I have to do is keep this horizontal.
Okay. And you're pushing down into the platform?
Right. Now I'm going to tap this back. If I loosened it, it's very hard to change it just a few degrees. And that's safe.
So really you only apply enough pressure to hold the tool onto the platform? Hold
it flat on the platform. Now I'm not evenly grinding it yet. That's what I'm trying to find the center of this tool where it'll actually look even on both sides. So I'm applying pressure, keeping it flat on the rest. Shorten that up just a little. Oh, that's looking great. I'm getting sparks evenly coming over both sides now.
That looks nice. So you're going to hone again, let me guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're not going to get this tool sharp unless you do. So just like the parting tool, I start at the back of the bevel. I never come off the back. It has a 2-point contact is what I'm doing there, Tim.
You get in trouble if you apply the hone to the tip first.
Absolutely. If you even 1 degree, you'll roll the edge over, and then you do the other side. This is how most turners do it. They don't put the stone down. They just hold the tool steady, and they hone to it. That's quite different from a wood carver.
Okay. And the hone is very, very fine grit, so it takes a little bit of work.
Absolutely. Okay. It's a 600 grit. Now I'm ready to show you what a sharp tool will do.
Okay. Been waiting for this.
Yeah. So already we can tell it's sharp by the kind of chips that are coming off. And also I'm using no pressure other than just to hold it flat on the tool rest here. That's another sign of a sharp tool, that when everything's right, it just feels effortless. And of course the real payoff is we turn off the lathe, and I want you to feel that section right there. What grit would you sand that with?
I wouldn't even touch it with sandpaper.
No, you wouldn't need to. And that's what a really sharp tool will do in wood turning many times. I mean, we all sand, but it reduces my sanding dramatically. I mean, this feels polished.
Right.
And that's a sharp tool.
Who likes sanding, right?
I don't know anybody who likes sanding.
Okay, on to our next tool.
Let's take on the more difficult tools, and those are the gouges. Okay, let's start here with a spindle roughing gouge. This is a tool to take off the corners of a square in spindle work to do cylinders and tapers. It's truly one of the easiest of the gouges to sharpen.
Right.
It's got a little bit of geometry here. This bevel angle is approximately 45 degrees. Tool should be straight across when looking at it like that. And when you look at it from the sides, it should be vertical or canted back a few degrees. That's the geometry of the tool.
Okay.
I would do the same thing, colored in black, set the angle, which I've already done actually for this one. Color it in black in just a few places, and that way whenever you do your first grind you can test it. Eye protection always.
Now are you using a different hand technique to roll the tool?
A little bit, since it's got this curved section, but I'm really trying to keep it flat on the tool rest. That's how you get multi-facets. If you get multi-facets, you can't hone it. And I work it very slow and deliberately. I think people trying to grind work too fast. when those sparks are that even, like we're seeing right there, I have a sharp tool.
But it is critical that you keep it straight across too. You don't want any waves in it.
Right, and you don't want to be doing this with it. If it develops waves in it too, that's from over grinding. And that's why you don't grind in areas that you see the spark trail coming very evenly. And there's my single facet and a slight hollow grind to it. That's just from the radius of the wheel being transferred in there. If we laid a ruler across this area, you'd see a little bit of light coming up from under it.
Now you're going to do more than just hone the bevel on this one, right?
Right, if you only hone one side of it, it's like sharpening a knife only on one side. So I hone the outside just like we've done the other two cutting tools. And just work it back and forth with that 2-point contact. And here's what's really different about the gouge. Now I have to go on the inside. To do that, I have a slipstone. You can also do this with a cone or a tapered cone, and you hold it flat inside of this area called the flute. You don't ever tip towards the edge, and just work it along like that. Because a cutting edge, Tim, is really two planes coming to meet. Unless I work on both of those, I don't have that sharp of a tool.
Right, because you've noticed through the years that when manufacturers, some manufacturers make their tools, they're not working as hard on this surface as they should possibly.
No, especially on the milled ones. Now this was hot work, but even it could be refined from the honing. But when we take the next two types of gouges that have been milled, they often leave deep milling marks. And you really don't get that sharp of a tool. You end up with a serrated edge.
Right, so you're talking like, you know, say you achieve 100% here.
Right.
If this is milled and is about 50%, your 100% is 50%. It doesn't matter. You can't get any sharper than that is going to allow you to get sharp.
You got a bread knife. Is what you got. And it isn't going to cut as smoothly as we did over there with the Skew Chisel, as we were doing.
Okay. What gouge next then?
Now we come to a tough one. This is probably the hardest tool I know of to sharpen in our wood turning set. And the reason being, it's so thin, and it also has to have kind of a fingernail shape. Now, this also points to a problem. When they're new, they look like this. This is more the shape that I want. It's really the same tool, very close in width, but look at the difference between my two tools.
Right, and this is almost how you get it when you buy it, right?
That's a brand new tool. I just removed that from the package, and here's one that I've been using for years. They're a side cutter. They have an elliptical shape, or what most turners call a fingernail shape.
And why do you want that shape?
It's because I'm cutting on the side with it. It cuts concave and convex shapes. Seldom do I ever use the point of it. When they come new, they either look like this, sometimes it's almost straight across, or they actually are in a spear point. This is a tool, it goes by many, many names, unfortunately, but I like to call it the detailing gouge or a spindle gouge, but it has other names too, so I just put spindle/detail gouge. And this is where I would shape it. And why don't I sharpen this one for you? Because this is how you're going to buy the tool. It's not going to look like mine probably, okay? Now, no longer can I set this platform because I can't follow the shape that I'm about to do. To rough it, I can set this down to 90 degrees. You know, but as small as it is, I can probably do it even as I have it set to rough it. Let me show you how I do that.
Okay.
Again, don't worry about a little bit of discoloration, a little bit of bluing. It really does not hurt these modern tools of high-speed steel. If you have an older tool, it would, and you'd be quenching it. And there it is. See, it doesn't take much to shape it.
Okay, Alan, I know there are manufacturers that make jigs that will hold this to make the fingernail grind, but you're an old-fashioned guy, so show us how you do this.
I'm a freehand guy. You don't have a jig to clamp it while you're turning, so I'm a believer you shouldn't have one while you're grinding. So here's how I'm going to do it. This is a hard tool, but it's simple. Set the angle just where this is comfortable for my hand. Rest the tool on my hand. Start in the middle. This angle in the front is about 35 degrees down to maybe 25. That's the traditional recommendation for this tool. So I'm going to set that in right here. You can use the protractor if you can't see angles very well. So now when I'm ready, I got the middle part of it ground. I'm going to push it up onto the wheel to do that side, and I grind with it coming right back down. You can just do a side at a time if you like.
Now, once you have this grind established, it's not that difficult to get back on the grinder then.
No, see, that's the beauty of it. Once you actually ground that in, you'll just come up and follow it. Ran off the wheel there.
I guess aim is important.
Yes, it is. just going to bring this down to where I knock off. See, I roughed this one in. That's why it takes a little longer. But I'm closing in on it. And then after you've done this, I mean, you can come back and just screw this up in about a minute or so grinding, but what I'm doing is recutting the bevel from that roughing that I did.
Now, is it simply preference on how pointy you make the tool?
Well, you don't want them too pointy, or I find they're kind of grabby. And if you don't pull back the sides, it's harder to do the side cut on beads and codes.
Because you could catch the edge.
Absolutely.
Or wind up with just part of it that doesn't cut.
And what this is, it's kind of a clearance angle that you round that steel back.
So you're just getting it out of the way.
Right, that's really what I'm doing, and making it a side cutter. And I've got some of the old grind on it from the manufacturer, and it'll look kind of funny here at first. But that should do it. Now, of course, you know what I'm going to do.
You're going to hone.
I got to hone it. And again, the little discoloration is not a problem, because this is high-speed steel. If this was carbon steel, that bluing would be a problem, but these aren't. These are high-speed steel. You can get them quite hot.
Gotcha. And because in the old days, what they did with the other steel is it would untemper it, if that's a proper term, and it would be weaker.
Right. It would be too soft. You just tempered it to something that wouldn't cut wood and hold an edge. But with high-speed steel, that's one of its advantages. Why this tool is so hard to do, it's so thin out here, and as you approach the edge, you can burn it away, and they start looking like a spear point. So go very gingerly with this tool. Again, if you can sharpen this one, you can do any of the turning tools, is my theory. So I'm going to hone the outside, then slip the inside. And it's not as pretty as what they would do in a jig, but it is a consistent edge and it's sharp, you know, and it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect in its appearance. But now we got a nice sharp tool there that'll remove the wood.
Now the last tool we have is the bowl gouge, right?
Right.
Let me ask you a question while we're getting to that. The hone you're using, diamond impregnated,
Right.
is that about the only thing you can use with these new steels?
Absolutely. When you get even to the basic M2 high-speed steel, it has enough vanadium and tungsten and other things. They're so hard for the other materials. That's why people don't like honing. They use traditional hones, not much happen. Diamond hones everything.
Okay.
Everything is honed with diamond. So that's the good news.
That's diamonds are Turner's best friend.
They are. They really are. Now, a bowl gouge is a tool without a tang in the sense of a triangular piece of metal. Here's one that's out of a handle. And this is how they often come. There's still plenty of them on the market that will come that are just straight up and down. They kind of look like my spindle roughing gouge. And there's turners who still use this grind. As a matter of fact, I open up the inside of a bowl with this grind sometimes, but you'll find it's not very versatile. This is one of the more common grinds, and for lack of a better name, I either call it a transition grind or I call it a fingernail shape on this grind. You know, I don't want to confuse it with a fingernail gouge that some people call the detail gouge, but it's got that same elliptical tip that I had on my detail gouge that I just sharpened. And that's what I prefer. And with beginners, this is the grind that I recommend. So you would take this to the roughing wheel and put a rough shape on it. You would just grind it straight back, put an elliptical nose, and then you would sharpen it, and I'll show you how we sharpen it.
Okay.
Matter of fact, it's going to be exactly the same movements that I did on the last one. I set this to where it's comfortable for my hands. Put on my eye protection, always. Start in the middle. Now this has a blunter nose. This is going to be anywhere from about 50 to 60 degrees on the front. That's so you can hollow a bowl easily.
Because if you have a different angle, the handle has to swing out too far.
Right, or you just simply can't rub the bevel when you do that cut from the sides to the bottom. That's one of the trickier places. So I'm doing it in the same way. I think this is an easier tool in the sense that I got a lot more steel. So it's easier to grind than the detail gouge.
Alan, you're honing again, and for all those people at home who think that honing is a bunch of malarkey, you have actual proof it works, right?
Yes, I do. These are digital microscope images. I work with a steel company on this, photographing my tools. Here's a Skew Chisel that's been ground from two sides, and all you get, it looks like a cutting torch produced the edge.
Wow, and that's 200 times magnification, and here?
Honed two sides. Look how refined the steel is and how straight it is too, because you've gotten rid of all those flakes of steel and refined the edge.
That's fantastic.
Now here's a gouge, not at 200x, but still highly magnified to see how even it looks. I've honed this two sides. Here's a gouge that's only been ground off the grinder, and I can't believe how many people use their gouges like this. Again, the cutting torch phenomenon, and look at these milling marks from the manufacturer. And what you have here, to me, is a tomato or bread knife.
That's amazing. And you showed me a cool little thing. For you at home who don't have a 200 times digital microscope to take photos of, this is a stack of razor blades somebody made for you. Right. And this is the back side where everything's flat and it's shiny, right?
Right.
And tell us about this phenomenon.
Because a sharp edge, when you get it under a light, should look black. A dull edge is thickness, it looks white. So here all these blades are put together, and this is called a light trap.
Nothing reflects out because it's sharp.
It's that sharp.
Well, thank you for being on the show today. Really appreciate it for tackling this subject of the religion of sharpening, Alan.
Had a good time.
Until the next time on the Wood Turning Workshop, keep turning.
And stay sharp. All right.
The Woodturning Workshop is made possible in part by
Woodcraft, since 1928, providing traditional and modern woodworking tools and supplies to generations of craftsmen. Woodcraft, helping you make wood work.
Tormek, water-cooled sharpeners with innovative jigs and setting devices. Getting your sharpening done quickly gets you back to the job at hand. Tormek, sharpening innovation.
For more information about the Woodturning Workshop, visit our website at rsupublictv.org.
So obviously you've worked on this grinder. It's not, oh heck, it's just words.
Words a lot of fun.
English.
I used to cook for a living. Now a lot of people are home.
Start over.
Hey, you're lucky we warmed this up before we put it down there.
It felt good. I was too hot.
What's that extra stuff on that?
Hair. All the hair is coming with.
See, you need something sharp for your back.
I do.
We'll wash that later. Okay.
To purchase a copy of this program, please call 1-800-823-7210 or visit our website, rsupublictv.org.
As Linus from Peanuts used to say, there are three things that you never talk about: religion, politics, and the great pumpkin. Well, we're going to add one more thing to that list this week.
Sharpening. I'm pressing down hard to keep it flat on the tool rest. I'm going to show you how to shape and sharpen and get them really, really sharp, even what we call scary sharp.
Until the next time on the Wood Turning Workshop, keep turning.
And stay sharp.